In this episode of Android Development Series 2025, I'm showcasing an app that lets you manage your contacts and make calls, all in one clean, lightweight package without the unnecessary clutter most apps throw at you. I'm your host, the Gen Z Dev. Introducing Fonetacts. Fonetacts is a clean and minimal contacts app built for people who just want the essentials. It gives you a simple contacts list, a smooth dial pad, and the ability to make calls instantly without the extra clutter like call logs or complex menus. Just open, find, dial, done. And before we jump in, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when the next banger drops. Alright, we're in the app now, and you can see some contacts. If you click on any contact, you're going to see the contact info screen with the name, the number, and 4 buttons, which you can use to call, edit, delete, and mark favorite. And there's additional info. Right now there's just the Gmail, the email of the person, and out of these 4 buttons you can use the call button. Yeah, that sound. That's because of the emulator. And you can delete this contact, which I'm not gonna do. And we can try that another on this one. Like that. The contact is deleted, and now you can use these buttons too to call anyone. Let's call Bob Gray. That's better. Also, you can use the dial pad to call someone. Okay. And you can save this number. Okay, but in case dial pad shrinks, what happens? Oh no, did you lose your contact? No, you didn't. Okay, now you can save this. And write the email. Hit save, and it's saved. Okay, where is it? There it is. Also, these buttons don't work right now. I'm gonna make another video and we're gonna fix this. So that's almost all of it. The sidebar doesn't work either right now, nor does the search. That's reserved for the second part. Besides, the code for even this app is a lot. Now let's look at the file structure of this app. So you have Android manifest, and you have data, mapper, navigation, screens, ViewModel, app module, and MainActivity. So usually you just have a MainActivity. And in the data folder, or package as you call it in Android Studio, you have contact data access object, you have contact database, contact entity, contact item, contact repository. Basically, these are here to save your contacts. And you have mapper, which will convert contact entity to contact item and vice versa. And you have navigation, which of course is for navigation between screens. And then you have screens, the actual screens, the add contact screen, the contact details screen, main KT, which is the main screen of your app where you display the contacts and the search bar and the navigation bar and all that. And you have the ViewModel, which is the brain of the UI as we call it, and contact ViewModel factory, which will produce this contact ViewModel, because this is a blueprint and this is contact ViewModel as an instance, as an actual thing. So, and you have this app module, which will provide database and provide repository. Now, I could have done this in the ViewModel factory itself, but I didn't because it's cleaner this way. And with that, we're almost done with the file structure, but you have these dependencies. So you have this ViewModel dependency and navigation and the room dependencies. For the room dependencies, you have room KTX, room compiler, and room runtime. And you gotta make sure that there's capt in your plugins, because if you don't do it this way, you're gonna have to suffer, because I did. So make sure you add capt as a plugin with ID and this org.jetbrains.kotlin.capt. And now we're done with the file structure and the main part of your app. Let's begin with the data package. So you have this contact item in which you have ID, name, number, email, favorite, which we didn't implement yet. And you have contact entity, which is the table for your contacts. Okay, so this table will have a primary key, which would be ID, and you're gonna have name, number, email, and is favorite again. So this primary key will be used to uniquely identify each contact. So you can later search it and you can update it in the table and through your app. Okay, and you have contact database. So this database has entities. So an entity is just a table, and this database has contact entity, which is your contacts table. You can say table name equals contacts. And you have this abstract class contact database implementing the room database, extending the room database. So it's a child of room database class. And it's going to have a abstract function contact data access object. So the database has a contact DAO, a contact data access object. And now you can see what the data access object looks like. So it's pretty simple. You have this query, a SQL query, or SQL as some call it. And you have select all from contacts and order by name in ascending order. And you have suspend function get all contacts, which returns a list of contact entity. Okay, and you have another query with select from contacts where is favorite is 1, order by name in ascending order. So when you get your favorite contact, they're going to be in ascending order too. And this query here makes sure that when is favorite is 1, that means is favorite is true. So they're going to return all the favorite contacts. Okay, let's not dwell on that. Next we have the insert contact suspend function, which on conflict will replace your old contact. This conflict will only happen if the primary key is the same for 2 contacts. But we know that's not going to happen. And you have this update function which is going to take contact in form of contact entity and update it. And you have the delete contact. And lastly, you have get contact by ID, which is going to take the ID, which is the primary key, and it's going to return the contact entity as a nullable. So it could be null. It could be null when you try to get a contact, but it doesn't exist. And the query here is select all columns from contacts where ID is this ID which we gave it, and the limit is 1. So that means only one contact matched. Alright, the mapper and the navigation package. So the mapper is simple AF. So you have contact entity and an extension function which is called toContactItem and will return, of course, contact item. And you can see ID equals ID, name equals name, number equals number, email equals email, favorite is assigned to its favorite, and vice versa. So there's not much to explain here. It's pretty simple. And you have this nav host. So in nav hosts, we define the nav routes first. So the nav routes are home, add contact screen with this parameter number, and you have details screen. We just called it details, and we're gonna pass it the ID, and there's this pass function which is gonna assist the passage of these attributes ID and number. And you have this fun app nav host function, which is going to take the nav controller and the ViewModel. So the ViewModel is basically for bridging the gap between the UI and the database. You see there are layers between the UI and the database. You can't just connect them both directly, you know? That's going to cause a lot of problems. So we have these abstraction layers, one after the other. Like we have ViewModel on the top, and then we have repository, and we have what we call it. What do we call it? We have this. Yeah, that's it. We have the ViewModel, we have repository, and then you have the raw database, where data access object, which is going to directly modify your database. I hope that's clear. And then we have the nav host, which we're going to give nav controller and the start destination, which is home. So navroutes.home.route. So we have these 3 composables inside, which are telling the nav host where to navigate. So when you navigate to route to home, you're going to call the contact screen. And when you navigate to add contact, you're going to pass the number. Okay, no. We're extracting the number which was passed in the route and using backstack to extract it. So backstack attribute is extracting the number, and if it's empty, it's going to return an empty. If it's null, it's going to return an empty string. And then you're going to call the add contact screen with that number that you extracted. Okay? And then you have this composable details. So details is doing something similar, where it's taking backstack entry as an attribute, as a parameter. Sorry about that. And it's going to define that ID and get it from the string and convert it to long, which was the data type of ID, as you saw in contact, entity, and item. These are long. And then we call the contact details screen with the ID, with the ViewModel, with the nav controller. Because nav controller would be passed to popback stack, which we call usually backing away from one screen. And ViewModel to actually, update the database, and ID for identifying the contact that we passed, of course. Yeah, it's a detailed screen, so yeah, we're gonna have to add that ID so we can see, so you can fetch the contact from the database. Yep. And that's about it. That's mapper and navigation. Now we're gonna get to screens and view model. Screens. So first we have this main screen, which is huge. Yeah. But I'm gonna explain it to you. So first you have this contact screen composable, of course, and with nav controller and the view model passed to it for reasons which are obvious. So you have this context and contacts, sheet state, show dial pad, type number, all these variables. And then you have this scaffold, which is basically the entire screen. And these are just assistive composable UI elements. Yeah, the main screen is only about this much. Wait a minute, right here. Beginning from here and ending here. That's the main screen. The elements the composables that you see here are just assistive UI elements. These are not the screen. These are defined in the screen or declared in the screen. So in the screen itself, you have this top app bar with the navigation icon, menu, and the title Fonetacts, as you saw earlier. And you have these actions, which is the search button, action button, icon button, which is the search button. And of course you have this floating action button, which is going to set show dial pad to true, and the dial pad is going to show. Yeah, right here. When it's true, the dial pad is going to show up, and I'm going to explain you in a moment. Okay, so you have this content window insets. It's going to make sure your top app bar doesn't creep into the notification status bar. Okay, then we have this padding for the scaffold, and you have the main column, which is going to contain your dial pad conditionally, or lazy column and items. Just the lazy column. The items are a part of it. So if show dial pad is true, we're gonna display a model bottom sheet, and on dismiss, when you click out of it, it's gonna set it to false and it's gonna disappear, and the sheet state is passed like so. Remember, model bottom sheet state, skip partially expanded true. So you have this sheet state, and you have this drag handle null, which will make the drag handle that you usually see in model bottom sheet disappear. So you have this dial pad sheet declared here, which is a custom composable that we defined right here. So the dial pad sheet is defined as follows. So you have this type number, and on number change, we're going to pass a function which takes a string and returns nothing. And you have this on call and on save functions that we're going to pass later up above. And this dial pad sheet is just a column at first. Yeah, it's just a column. So inside this column you have this row, and the row is going to have the type number, the icon button, which is backspace button, and then you have some space, and finally the buttons that you see, the dial pad buttons, and then you have some space, and then a row. The row will have call and save buttons. Okay, so that's about it. That's about dial pad sheet. Now you have this row dial function and the dial button, which are easy to understand. So the row dial will take 3 parameters. Now, not 3 but 6 parameters, and an onPress function as a parameter. So you have this row inside row dial with a dial button, with 3 dial buttons, and they are spaced evenly, and they fill maximum width, the rows that you saw for the dial buttons, for the dial pad. Okay, and the dial button itself is a surface with the rounded corner shape, and color is surface variant. Tonal elevation is 3 dp. Modifier would have this size 85 with padding 4, and interaction source is defined generically. It's generic, it's not anything specific. Okay, and indication is null, so that when you click it, it's not going to show that shadow that you clicked it. And then you have this haptic, perform haptic feedback. So when you click on a button, it's going to vibrate. So I can't really show vibration in the emulator, so you're going to have to try it on your own device when you do. And inside this you have this column, which is going to have the text, and if the letters are null, then text, letters, font size. Okay, so this is basically the ABC that you see below the numbers, 1 ABC, 2 DEF, all that stuff. And you can see that the column is centered horizontally, and vertical arrangement is also centered and taking maximum size, because maximum size should be allocated to the column inside the surface. So it really stretches the button, shows it clearly. Oh yeah, that's it. Now we have the contact row. But before that, we're gonna see where we define it. Okay, so show dial pad is gonna show that dial pad sheet with the type number, and on number change is gonna change the type number to your new value, and on call is gonna check if the type number is not empty, and it's gonna launch an intent action call, which is gonna call the number like so. Dot apply data equals URI dot parse telephone tell type number. Yeah, that's it. And then you have to start this intent. It's not going to happen on its own. You're going to have to start the start activity intent, and you're going to have to pass the context, which is this one, context local context dot current. For on save, and yeah, that's on call and on save of the dial pad that you saw before. So on call will call the contact, and on save will close the dial pad, and it's going to navigate to the add contact screen. I know it's kind of heavy, but just stick with it. Stick with me, and it's gonna make sense. Then you have this lazy column with which is gonna fill the maximum width left after the top app bar, and no, not this, after the top app bar. So, oh yeah, after the top app bar, and yeah. So it's gonna have this item, which is a row of those buttons that you saw before. All favorites, business, professional. And they have the same configurations. They have the same shape, rounded corner shape, 15 dp, and the same padding, 1 dp, 1 dp. And then you have these items. And for the items of this lazy column, you're gonna pass the contacts, which are right here. So this here will fetch your contacts using the ViewModel and collect them, not at one time, as a state, one after the other, you know, without pausing anything else in the app. So it's gonna fetch those contacts, and then for each contact it's gonna call contact row, which is defined here, and it's gonna call a horizontal divider. So the contact row itself is defined as follows. It's just a row with a surface which has a box inside and some space, and a column which is going to show the contact name and number, and the icon button on click, which has the same function as before with the icon call, and description is null. Yeah, so I think you get the main KT or main screen now. Now let's look at the contact details screen. Yeah, this one's a little big. So, lengthy. Contact details screen. It's going to take the ID for fetching the contact from the database, and it's going to take a ViewModel and the nav controller. So first we're going to fetch the contact. First we're going to define the contact, and we're going to keep it null. And then we're going to define the context, local context.current, and you have the launched effect, which is gonna fetch the contact for you without blocking anything else. And you can see ViewModel is being used to get contact with the ID, and it's defining the contact variable which we defined before. It's passing value to it, assigning value to it after it's been defined to be null. And then you have this scaffold as usual that we do for every screen in Android. So this scaffold will have padding as always, padding parameter as always, and the top app bar will be an arrow back. And what is it going to do? On click, it's going to nav controller.pop backstack. It's going to pop the screen of the stack, and you're going to return to the previous screen. And so this detailed screen is also a column. So a column stacks things vertically, one on top of the other. So on the top you're going to have, if the contact is null, you see if you try to fetch the contact but it returned null, then this is going to show, which is a column with "you can't see me" with some space and the arrangement would be centered horizontally and vertically, and it's going to fill the full screen, and there's going to be some padding as always. Otherwise, if the contact isn't null, then we're going to define a val c, a constant variable. Yeah, that sounds weird. A constant with contact as the assigned value with strict non-null assertion operator. So you're going to have this column with fill max width and padding. So vertical arrangement is spaced by 12 dp. So the columns items are spaced vertically by 12 dp, and the horizontal alignment is centered again. And what you saw before, there was a round icon with the letter, right? So this is how I define it. You're gonna have a shape, circle shape, and the color would be this primary color with alpha 0.2 float value 0.2f, and a modifier size is 200. Size would be 200 dp, with the box being inside it, and it's aligned to the center. Yeah, the box is basically containing the text, which is the first letter of the contact name, first to string, replace first character and make it uppercase. Yeah, that's what it's gonna do. It's gonna take the first character of your name and convert it to string, and then replace first character with uppercase character. And it's gonna give it a font size of 55 sp. And then you have this name and the number just after it. Finally, we have the row of buttons. So these buttons, as I defined before, are call button, edit, delete, and favorite. So favorite button isn't defined yet. You can see here, on click does nothing. And all these 4 buttons will have the same configuration. So call will do the same exact thing as before. You can just copy this code from earlier, okay? And the UI. So the UI is just, its height would be 50 dp, and its size would be 30 for every one of them. 30, 30. Even this one has the size 30 here too. And the text below them, favorite, delete, and all that, would be 15 sp. Okay. All of them will have horizontal alignment, centered horizontally. These columns, with the button and the text and the spacer. Spacer is just space, And then we have a horizontal divider, which is gonna divide these 2 contact details with the additional info column. So this additional info is also a column, which is gonna fill the maximum size left on the screen after you have this details part of the screen UI. So additional info is body large, that's the font size, or style, both. So the contact email, so if you try to access the email and it's not null, then you're going to show the email with that email emoji and this string template contact email. You can access it. Otherwise, you're going to show this icons.default inbox icon with this text, nothing here yet. And that was the heavy part of this app. Then you have this add contact, which is much simpler. So in add contact screen, you're going to have the number pre-fill parameter, the ViewModel and nav controller, and the on-done. On-done is going to save the contact and the context as before, because we're going to use it for displaying toasts. Yeah. So again, you define a scaffold. By now it should be a second nature to you that we're always going to define a scaffold for any screen that we make. So the scaffold has a top app bar, again, center line top bar, and it's going to have that back icon that we saw before, with arrow back iOS new being the exact image vector. And content description is null right now. Title is add contact, and you have this name and email variables that we're going to define. We're going to use later. After that, we have defined the column, which is basically the entire screen. So the column will fill max size that is left after the top app bar. It's going to have the padding that is scaffolds padding. Vertical arrangement would be spaced by 12 dp. So it's going to have some space between them, between the picture, the name, email, and what was that other one? The number. All these three text fields are going to be spaced by 12 dp. And the horizontal alignment would be center horizontally. So you have another column inside it, which is the icon, the person icon that you saw in the add contact screen before. So it's just a default person icon, and its color is gray, and its modifier sets its size to 300 dp. Big, very big. So the text field, first text field you saw there was name, and on value change when you type something, it's going to change the value to that, change the name variable to that value, and the label for this text field is name. It's going to have a rounded corner shape, 15 dp, and all these three text fields are same. So that was it. No on value change, it's going to do nothing, because you literally just type the number using the dial pad, right? So we set enable to false, so you can't edit the phone number after you've just pressed the save button from the dial pad. And then you have the email with a similar code as name. Finally, you have some space between these three text fields and the button, and the save contact button. So on click, we're going to summon ViewModel and its add contact function or method, add contact method, which is going to take a contact item with ID 0, name, number as the number pre-filled number from the dial pad, and the email. And we're going to call the onDone function, which was right here in the nav host. OnDone, where is it? Add contact, right? There it is, OnDone. OnDone nav controller pop back stack. So when it's done, we're gonna just close add contact screen. Close this add contact screen, and we're gonna make a toast contact saved, and its length is gonna be short. And then this button has a shape, a rounded corner shape, 10 dp, and of course it's called the save contact button. Well, that was a lot. And then we have contact ViewModel and ViewModel factory and the app module. We're in the thick of it. So contact ViewModel factory will, this ugly code will generate your ViewModel properly using the repository that we defined earlier. And it does that in the main activity. But let's just look at this code. So it takes repository, your repository, as a parameter, and it provides a ViewModel provider.factory type object. And inside it you have this function which we're going to override. So it was defined earlier for this parent class. And we're going to pass it out class, contact ViewModel, and class would be a Java class. And we're gonna suppress this with this annotation, unchecked cast. That's the name of this suppression that we're doing. And the return will return a contact ViewModel with the repository passed, and it's going to return it as type T. So type T is a type ViewModel type. Yeah, if that makes sense. And it's going to throw illegal argument exception, a non-ViewModel class. That's about it for contact ViewModel factory, if you actually got it. Okay, now you have this contact ViewModel. This is easier to understand. And you have this repository variable. Wait a second. Yeah, you have this repository of type contact repository, which is an attribute of this class, contact ViewModel, and is inheriting from ViewModel, of course, which here it is, androidx.lifecycle.viewModel. Private val contacts with a hyphen underscore, and it's empty. So there are two contacts variables because this one is private to this class contact ViewModel and its objects, and this one is public. So anyone accessing these should be getting this one because this one is actually non-modifiable. You can only read it. So our UI, this one is going to be accessible to the UI. So the UI shouldn't directly modify the contact list. Similar with the favorites, and when any object of this class is initiated, it's going to load the contacts using this function. And this function, all it does is gives this contacts variable a value, which is the repositories, where the repository provides all the contacts, and all these contacts are converted to contact item. As you can see, the contact item was the data type of the list. And load favorites does the same. Okay, add contact. So add contact is going to use the scope of ViewModel, and it's going to insert the contact by converting it into contact entity, and then it's going to load the contacts again. So it's a refresh. Same with the update and delete. It's just going to use repository to delete it, update it, insert, And then you have this get contact. It's going to take the ID and on result function. So it's going to have an entity which will be fetched from the repository by using get by ID method of the repository. And on result, it's going to convert the entity returned to contact item. Okay, so let me be clear with you. The contact entity is an abstract data item, data type, data class. And the contact item is for the UI to handle. So that's why we're converting it to contact item when we are retrieving it from getContact, and we're converting it to entity, contact entity, to delete it, and to update it or adding it. And when we're getting it from the load contacts, we're converting it to contact item data class. Same with the loading. Now we have this app module, which should be basically a part of ViewModel factory, because it provides the database and it provides the repository. So it's just gonna take the context and return the database with using context, which is passed to it, and it's gonna have our contact database. It's gonna name it contacts_db, contacts_db, and it's gonna build it and return it. Okay, so this part is separate. This is an object, database object of type of room, and we have this provide repository, which is going to provide the contact repository with the database that is passed, which would be this one. Okay, let me show you how exactly does it work in MainActivity. Okay, so in MainActivity you have all those functions that you usually have. That is onCreate, and the call to super onCreate, it's parent class. Parent class is, the method. So these two will remove those flashing when you navigate between two screens. You may have seen that in earlier projects, and this here is going to fix that problem if you faced it. So make sure to use these two lines: window compat set decor, fit system windows, and give it window and make it false. So disable it and set the background to transparent. It was white earlier, and that was causing a lot of problems. Okay, and then we're gonna request permission. So the call phone will require a permission, which is permission to call phone, which you're gonna have to define in the Android manifest right here. Uses feature Android hardware telephony and uses permission to call phone. And the set content would have your theme first, and then we define the nav controller with remember nav controller and context current db equals remember. We're using this app module now. Yep. So app module.provide database. So the database providing function would need context, and that context is right here. So when the app launches, it's going to create the database. And the repo would take the DB that you just created, and factory will need the repo. Finally, the ViewModel would take the factory that you created. And that's it. Then you have this app nav host, which is going to take nav controller and ViewModel. And finally, you're done with this app. You've made it to the end.